Hello, Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Hope you're all safe, sound, and healthy. And today is the third day of Ramzan here in the subcontinent, and it is the fourth day of Ramzan in most parts of the world. And this brings me to there was this vlog that I was watching, in which it was their first Ramzan in England. And they were really confused because it was also their first experience of how, they kept on calling all their friends to find out, is it confirmed that that Ramzan has begun the next day, which for them was the Saturday. And they said that they were like, getting these mixed things. Some were saying, oh, we're following Pakistan time. Some were saying, oh, we're following Moroccan time. And this is absolutely ridiculous. I'm sure they probably, so they just followed the standard Saturday, which was correct, by the way. Because let me tell you, trust the Desis to create their own problems wherever they go. This is something that there is no debate about. This is something that is very, very clear in Islam, and it's very common sense as well, that you look at the moon of the location you're living in. You cannot live in England and say, oh, we're following Pakistan's Ramzan. Are you crazy? Like, what's wrong with you? Or we're following India's Ramzan. Trust the Indians and Pakistanis to make a nonsensical biddat out of everything that they come across. This is the worst kind of things that you can do. And this is, if anything, it just proves that you people are not, the kind of Muslims that you always like to claim to be, that you're like the best Muslims, and that you, no, this just shows how stupid you people are, seriously, that you have created this confusion where there is absolutely no chance of a confusion. Because you begin your month, you begin your Ramzan with the look, it pertains to the location that you're in. Okay, if you're in Pakistan, then obviously if the moon is sighted the next day, you begin your Ramzan the next day. If you are in England, in fact, even in Pakistan, technically the moon shouldn't be sighted the next day. In India, in certain parts of India, it makes sense, but in no parts of Pakistan does it make sense. Because we have only 2 to 3 hours difference with the Middle East, which means we share the same day. Okay, which means if they can see the moon on that day, you should bloody well be able to see the moon on that same day. But trust the Pakistanis, as I said, to create a problem where there's none. And the fact that they would go to a different country and also do that, although I know that there are certain countries that, but you know what, those countries, it doesn't matter if they do it or not, because they shared the same moon sighting too, by the way, as England or as the Middle East. It's only you people here who create these problems. And then again, as I said, trust you to go to a different country and create the same problems. Like, why on earth would you follow Pakistan or India's Ramzan dates while living in England, when in England the moon is sighted the same day as in the Middle East? Obviously, they're going to share it with the Middle East. Don't try to create your own whatever it is that you're doing. Stop that. You're not better Muslims for doing that. If anything, you're just worse. Okay? So yeah, I mean, this is common sense, as I said, and it is very clearly, very, very clearly written in Islam that you follow the sighting of the moon of the location that you're living in. And if in England they have said that they have sighted the moon, and that it is, and as I said, England, Europe, and the Middle East, they share the same dates. Okay, most parts of Europe and the Middle East, they share the same dates. So if they have unanimously agreed that they are starting with the Middle East, then who are you to bring in your own personal chaos and say, oh no, we have to follow India and Pakistan? You're not living in Pakistan. You're not living in India. You have to follow the unanimous decision of the moon sighting of the location that you reside in. Period. No discussion, no debates. Shut up. That's all I can say. So here we are. We have gotten that out of the way. And now we can move on to what really happens in Ramzan, that to me, not just in Ramazan, but I mean, during Ramazan, it just reminds me all over again of my main concern, which I've mentioned previously, I'm sure, in a few of my podcasts, and I've mentioned every now and then on social media, and that is the weird fact that there are so many charity organizations. As you know, Pakistan is known to be the it has the largest number of charity givers, you can say, or the largest number of charity that they give in the world. But the problem again is, if there is so much charity going on, why is there still famine in the world? Why is there still poverty in the world? You hear of all these organized international organizations. You see Rotary, you see Oxfam, you see all these organizations that are always building things and building cities, or building, or uh, you know, sort of giving new life to destroyed villages or cities due to earthquakes or due to wars or due to whatever. Again, especially I have a bone to pick with Oxfam. How is it that your charities are never ending? How is it that you have the same project going on and on and on and on? And it, where does that money go? This is the question I've asked like a bazillion times to all the charity organizations all over the world. Where does the money go? Why is it still never ending? Why is it that in the world things are just worse? I mean, why are there hungry people in the world? It means that even in charity, there is monopolization. I'll give you a small example. During Ramzan, as you know, there are a lot of Russian drives, right, in Pakistan. Just take Pakistan, for example. In Pakistan, almost every other house that can afford it are always giving rations. Now, there are two types. You have the rations that you give to your employees, your servants, your help, your drivers, your gardeners. And then there are rations that people go and distribute to all the poor. So the poor come over, they take what they want, they take the ration bags, they leave. Now, here's the question. Those people who do the Russian drives, I'm talking about them, not those who are giving to their servants and their employees and all, because that they already know who they're giving it to, and that's fine. When you do a Russian drive and people from all over come and they take the Russian and go. Now, you think you've done your bit, but this is something that at least last year, then people started to really try to do something about it as well, because this had become a huge issue, that actually you think you're helping people, but you're still depriving the people who really need it. Why? The people who don't really need it, they keep on coming and they keep on taking a ration, and they go and they sell them, they make money and they leave. So at the end of the day, it's being monopolized again. Your charity is again being monopolized because a certain type of people are coming and they're pretending to be the poor and the needy, and these are people who again work in other places. They're other people's servants, other people's drivers, other people's maids, other people's help. They've already gotten their share from all of those houses that they're already working in, and then they come to these Russian drives and they collect Russian again, and then they go and they sell all the food, all the Russian, to these markets, to the local supermarkets. They go, they sell them, or they go to other local markets, they sell them, they make money, and they leave. And at the end of the day, your efforts to give ration to the poor and the needy who are probably sitting unable to afford it has failed. It has utterly failed, which is why, as I said, last year, then people started getting very, very careful. Some people even started making lists so that they should make sure, and when it was not last year, actually, I'm talking more about, it started 2 to 3 years ago, more than 3 years ago, when Imran Khan came into government. Then many PTI volunteers, what they started, what the government did, actually, what Imran Khan did was a very good thing, is where they went door to door to make sure that all those people who are on their list marked as, people who will be in need. So they went door to door. They dropped off ration bags, you know, uh, that ensured equal distribution. It ensured fair distribution. And because of that, even the local people, as I said, the local people who were opening charity drives, because they too had realized how their mission was basically failing. They failed to deliver to the people who really, really needed it, because other people who didn't need it would come, would take it, would go, would sell it. So people also started making those kind of lists and all. Then people also collaborated with PTI volunteers and said, okay, you know what, take with some of these rashes that we're trying to give away to the poor and needy, take these from us and distribute them to your home to home, door to door delivery and all, so that there should be more of it to distribute to more people. So there was this, this cycle had, begun. But now with this illegal government that has come on top of us, I think that is obviously out of the question, because this government is too busy eating, it's stealing from the poor and the rich and the middle class alike. They have nothing to give, right? In fact, thanks to them, thanks to the antics of theirs with regards to the wheat supply last year. This year, the farmers decided that we're not going to harvest or grow or cultivate as much wheat. And I think it's about 11% down. It's expected to be 11% down, the cultivation. And this year it's going to be, because they were like, oh, the government is going to do the same thing. And obviously, the government did that in order to ensure that the wheat supply goes down this year, so that they can get, they can make money and get kickbacks like they did last year from buying third quality wheat that nobody's going to eat, nobody's going to use. Because when you're a country that produces wheat and you export wheat, then you will not easily go and eat any other type of wheat except for top quality, which you produce yourself. So imagine that they have deliberately created this shortage again, just like how they every year create a deliberate shortage of sugar by hoarding it. And remember, it's because it's the politicians, and that is why your politicians are not allowed to own businesses. For exactly this same reason, most countries have this law, it's in the constitution, that your politicians are not allowed to own businesses. Because in order to make money, in order to make profits off of their businesses, they will destroy your country. And we have proof right here. Nawaz Sharif's government has time and again used exports of food and imports of food to destroy this country. And they are following their same old pattern of creating deliberate shortage of sugar and wheat. Thanks to them, in fact, there began a shortage of cultivation of cotton as well. Now, we are a cotton producing country. Again, we export cotton. We have high quality cotton. And yet, in the recent years, if you remember, I have been lamenting about the shortage of having pure cotton fabric, of having pure cotton clothes. And, and it's because all those, they literally were villages and villages that used to produce cotton. And then when they realized that there's nothing in it, it's not of, they stopped producing cotton and they started producing rice. And many now have stopped even producing rice and they went for wheat. And now they've stopped producing wheat, and so they'll go for something else. So again, you see, and so the army and the government are creating these deliberate shortages because the army wants to illegally take over farmlands in the country, because the army wants to take over agriculture. Now, remember, this is something I talked about in many podcasts ago, where I said that when your government and your army especially starts to monopolize and they want to take over resources, understand they're preparing for war. So all your governments, American government, the British government, the European governments, Indian, Pakistani, all these governments and army organizations in different countries, right now they had already begun the process 2 years ago of hoarding and taking control of agriculture resources. Okay? Agriculture and other resources. And then they've also tried to take control of water. They've tried to take control of other basic supplies and utilities and resources, again, because they're preparing for war. Keep that in mind. They will deprive the people to fulfill their needs when the war begins. So they're depriving their people to already begin to strategically fulfill their needs so that they should be successful during war. As you know, in war, what is important? Salt is important, water is important, food is important. So taking control of all these sources, of these resources, is what the governments and the army organizations are doing. Okay, so this is something that I've talked about like many times again previously. So let's just get that out of the way again and move on to the fact that, okay, so this government is basically not going to give anything. In fact, this government has stolen from the funds, this government has stolen from the people, they've stolen from the taxes, they've stolen from practically every single source that they could get. They have stolen from businessmen that they forced to close down, they've stolen from mill owners that were not politicians. Okay, so they have literally deprived everybody of their basic utilities and they've stolen money at the same time. So, what's happened again? Once again, now, obviously, people who had the good fortune to somehow, work with the previous government to be able to help with fair distribution of ration and all, so they sort of started that system where they could collaborate with volunteers. Now, obviously, those volunteers are still here. You still have the PTI volunteers who have, because remember, they've always been volunteers in PTI because initially, when Imran Khan began, he began with charity, if you remember, when he wanted to build trust hospitals and all. He's still building those trust hospitals. So, there is a huge part of PTI group that is in charity, and into social work. So all the social workers obviously are going to be out there. They're going to be helping others with whom they're in contact or who can contact them. And, they will again probably begin that cycle. But generally, on a general scale, on a universal scale, once again, let's try to understand that number one, when we are giving to charity, it seems that we are giving to the same charity or the same people, in other words, or the same groups over and over again, right? From my understanding. And that is if you're not corrupt. If you're not corrupt, then the one reason why despite all the charity work, we still have a large part of the world in famine, a large part of the world living in hunger below poverty line, without housing, without basic facilities and utilities, is if you pretend that it's innocent, let's say, then okay, it's because there are certain groups of people that seem to be monopolizing that charity. The charity seems to be going to the same groups of people over and over again. But if this is not an innocent um, consequence, okay, if this is not an innocent collateral damage that is taking place due to, you know, a lack of possible fair and equal distribution, then this is entirely 100% deliberate and that is corrupt. So, again, I would ask all these international organizations and national organizations that keep asking for donations and they keep on saying, oh, we have this project, we have that project. Why is the world still in pain? Why? There are so many people that have begun the Palestinian aid. And we know that even when people were talking about how they were sending aid to Palestine, we know that Israel was stopping that aid. Fine, people found a way through Egypt. Okay, that was acceptable and believable. But what of the others? All the other organizations that claimed to be working for Palestinian aid. Where did all that aid go? Did it actually reach the Palestinians? I mean, we don't know. Because as I said, I have seen so many charity organizations claim to be working for a particular project, but I see that they keep on and on working for that same project. Now, when it comes to Palestine, it's understandable because the war is never ending, or should we say the genocide is never ending. How can we even call it a war when it's a full-fledged occupation? So the occupation is never ending, so the pain is never ending, so the hunger is never ending, the homelessness is never ending. That one can understand. But when you're talking about places like Africa, for example, which, by the way, Africa, like Asia, is actually an extremely rich continent with a huge amount of resources. And like Asia, most of Africa is being stolen from by the previous, colonists, the Europeans, and of obviously their dog America. So Africa is being ripped apart. It's being stolen from. It's being, manipulated. It's been exploited very badly. And finally, the African governments are getting together and they're like, okay, enough is enough. No more. Get lost. Kudos to them. But I think they still need to become a little more aggressive and completely cut off from the European world, and in fact leverage, the European needs, to their advantage, which is something that Asia should have done too. And very few Asian countries have managed to do that. So we are all at a loss because of that. Because we have these deranged, demented white people moving around thinking, these barbarians who have borrowed from our cultures, they've borrowed from our religions, they have borrowed from our systems. And then they're trying to deprive us of our own resources, our own cultures, our own religions, our own systems. So here you are. And then, as I said, look at Africa. Look at Sudan. This is a British made crisis right there. As if Palestine and Kashmir weren't enough, the British decided to leave another crisis, and that was Sudan, where they broke up a country which was very fine until they came. That country lasted eons until the British came, and it is thanks to the British that that country broke up. And now the South Sudan that they were always harping about, that we want this, we broke it up because we want South Sudan to be free. And right now South Sudan is filled once again. I mean, it never ended. The chaos, the terrorism, the wars, the famine, the lack of law and order, turning it into a full-fledged war-torn state. And it still is. So what changed? You broke Sudan into two. What changed? That area is still fested with, with no law and order. It is still fested with killings, with crimes, with chaos, with economic crisis. There's no peace, in other words. So that's the British for you. As I said, they're deliberately wreaking havoc in other countries so that they can continue to steal from them, right? So when you people with your charity organizations, I'm talking about you Western charity organizations like Oxfam and the others, when you come and you ask, and Rotary and all, when you come and you ask people to donate to a certain drive or to donate to a certain project or to donate to a certain, you know, whatever it is that you're always asking for, how is it that I don't see any results anywhere in the world that you claim to be working on? And your most favorite part is Africa. I mean, all the charity drives, all the American and the European charity and social welfare organizations, they're always, ranting and on about Africa and Africa. So why is it that nothing's changed there then? Where's all that money going? This question will continue to last. And in my mind, I'll continue asking this question. Why is there no change despite all the charity work? Where does the money go? So this Ramzan, when we're giving out charity and when we're doing drives, I know people they have specific goals. They work on one project and then they move on to the next, which is a very good thing. And that is exactly what I would say is the best thing, especially as individuals or as small groups to do. Those who are doing charity drives at home, which they always do every Ramzan, where they open their homes to, people that they just come, they take their rations and they go. I would say that you need to look for a better alternative. I would say it is better to contact volunteers that you know, social workers that you know, and do a proper listing once again, like was started, you know, during the time of Imran Khan's government a few years ago. I think you should start that, where I know it's a bit of hard work, but see, that's it. Charity is not even supposed to be so easy that you just open your doors and you say, oh, anybody, whether you deserve it or not, come take it and go. And I've done my work, and the rest is up to God. Do a little bit of hard work, you know, go to the areas where you know there are people who cannot afford it. Because listen, the people who really cannot afford it, they're not going to come and ask you. We all know that, right? We know though. We know that. And in fact, the biggest point of sadness for us is that we can't seem to be able to reach those people, because those people do not tell anybody that they're in need. They're living quietly in their homes, and they're just making do with whatever it is that they can. And they cannot afford much or anything, but they're keeping quiet about it. So you don't know. And again, this is where, as I said, your social worker friends or your connections in the, social welfare or the volunteers in field, that's where they come in handy. I think it's better that you contact them, you ask them that, okay, do you know of these specific areas or people who you think are in need but are not coming out and telling us about it, or, asking for ration or anything? And then you can quietly just deliver it to their homes. I think that is still a better option, rather than letting people's maids and drivers and servants and those who live on, and there are so many houses where people live abroad and their houses are empty, so they have caretakers living in their quarters. Those people, so all of these people who come and they collect ration from all the ration drives and from all the houses, that they go around ringing bells, which is extremely annoying, where every 5 minutes people are ringing the bells and saying, oh, do you have any ration to give? And you can clearly see that these are not those people that you need to be giving ration to, right? So they come, they collect all these rations, they go, they make money out of it. And again, the people who the ration needs to get to are still deprived. And this is, as I said, on a small local level, you can see that. So you can imagine what's going on an international level. So this Ramzan, let's just think about how we can somehow try to reach those people who really need help but cannot ask for it and do not ask for it, and how to quietly help them without making them feel degraded, because that's the reason they don't ask. You see, these are what we call in our language safed posh people, right? Safed posh log. Safed posh log are those people who apparently, in all appearances, they are living okay. So they're like respectable people, they have their own home, they seem to be okay, but actually they cannot afford many of the basics, especially with the ongoing inflation, with the ongoing economic crisis, with the ongoing stealing of the government in the form of taxes, in the form of, levies, in the form of bills, in the form of, just taking from the government funds, in the form of kickbacks, that they're, creating unnecessary projects. So, yeah, the government is too busy looting from us. So there are people who are getting it, for them day by day, it's getting harder and harder for them to get through the day, you know. So those are the people who really, really need help. And as I said, because they don't tell us about it, they don't talk to anybody about it. So you have to, those of you who, but there's always somebody obviously who's close to them and who knows. So obviously those who are close to them and they know, they would help them in their own way. But there are others who may have nobody to help them too. Let's try to look for those people and quietly help them, because that is the essence of charity, especially during Ramzan. Well, have a blessed Ramzan Mubarak to everybody once again. Hope this time everybody manages to do whatever it is that they set goals on, and that may it all be good for them. This is me signing out. Khuda Hafiz.